What if you were the Colossus and also a robot? We just got to see Gen Atlas behind closed doors, an extended trailer, and we got to talk to the creator, Fumito Ueda. Simon and I are here at Summer Game Fest. I just want to get your top level thoughts as someone who loves his work, who's loved Shadow of the Colossus, Eco, Last Guardian. How do you feel about Gen Atlas now that we saw a little bit more of it?
I am excited. Like you said, on some days, maybe Shadow of the Colossus is my favorite game ever. So to get to talk to him was just alone exciting. But to see even more of Gen Atlas, I'm even more excited for the game because that first trailer, it gave us some things. It gave us, the giant creatures you'd expect from an Ueda game, right? That sense of scale. You can already tell without knowing really what it's about, there's going to be that sense of pathos, that sense of human connection at the core of the game. But we got to see more of maybe what you'll be doing in the game. And it does seem like this one will be a little more combat heavy than maybe we expect from one of his games. He did speak to us and said, if Eco was a game that kind of was rooted in not really having combat, Shadow of the Colossus swung one way to the other side of that and was kind of combat-led, but albeit with a sword, there was no guns. Last Guardian, again, went away from combat, and he's kind of swung the pendulum back the other way here with Gen Atlas. There's guns, which we've never had in a Ueda game before, and it's a sci-fi game, which we've never had from Ueda before. Normally rooted in fantasy, this time we're exploring a sci-fi world, albeit, I think, with similar themes. He didn't want to go too deep into what the game is. He doesn't ever really explain what his games are about, right? I think good artists don't really tell you what their things are about. But what did you think of it being sci-fi and not fantasy? Is that a welcome shift for you?
Yeah. I think, he's done fantasy style games like Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Last Guardian. There's a through line there. There's some similarities there, and he explores similar themes, but does them in new ways, right? And I actually I asked him about that, what is it about moving to sci-fi that opens up new ideas for you? And he was honestly it's gonna be a similar game in that sense, but he was talking about some of the more minute details about how he can do storytelling now that it's in a sci-fi world. And I'm thinking about what you were saying about guns and combat in a game. It's is that the kind of game that he's making? And I my impression is that this is something that is purposeful. It's gonna have a message behind it, and not to blow smoke for a game that we haven't got hands-on with, but I think he's very thoughtful with his games. There's direct intent with the things that he's doing. And he talked about how scale is one of the points that he tries to get across with his games. And I think you asked about that as well. What is it about these huge, larger than life figures that works for your games? Is it something that you're just impressed by? And when I thought about my experiences with those games, and it's yes, to feel small, to conquer something bigger, but also to have a message that isn't directly told to you.
Yes,
that's what makes his game stand out. And I don't doubt that is the case with Gen Atlas, but moving to a sci-fi theme, I feel like we're going to explore similar themes, but in different ways, and in a modern context where technology is kind of having a huge impact on our world. I don't want to put pressure on him, because I did ask him, do you feel pressure all the time to if you work on a game, is it supposed to be life-changing for somebody? And he's like, hey, I just make what I make, and hopefully it connects with people. The expectations are there for that, but also from what we saw in the trailer and some of the more moment-to-moment things there, it's it's kind of the game you expect from a Ueda, but exploring a few new mechanics to maybe make that extra step, or actually at least differentiate itself. Those are the things I'm looking for. You can do a similar game again with a little twist, and I'm kind of here for it.
Well, I think a big change with this one might be the fact that it doesn't seem like you're only playing as the human character. In his other games, you've been the David to the Goliath, whether you're taking down or working with these giant creatures. In this one, it seems you're also controlling the giant robots at points, or parts of them. We've seen a flying head. I asked him what was kind of the inception of this game, what was the spark that started it all, and he said the short answer is giant robots. He just wanted to make giant robots.
Sometimes giant robots is kind of all you need.
Exactly. Everyone loves the Iron Giant.
Yeah.
He said he grew up watching a lot of kaiju cinema. He's always been in awe of giant creatures, machines, and you can see that in his work quite evidently. But also the longer answer to that question is he had this image that he couldn't get out of his mind of a giant robot holding its head underneath its arm, and he just wanted that image to be in the game. it seems like maybe, I don't know, I'm completely theorizing at this point, that maybe it's almost going to work like the inverse of Shadow of the Colossus, where in that game you go around and have to kill all these giant creatures. I have the feeling we're going around this world and we're almost putting them back together. We're almost fixing them, like getting their head back on their body and kind of almost bringing this world back to life. If I had to guess at this point, that is what this game is going to be about, reconnecting us to the world and technology in a way that is beneficial to us without it maybe destroying our soul.
And so, like, I asked him a little bit about, do you go into these games with the intent of sending a message, or do you want to say something broader about human life and human creation? And, if you played his games, he doesn't say anything specifically or explicitly in those games, but there is still like an emotional core. And I think he like has this understanding of like what resonates with people without having to say it, shows it visually and shows it by the things you have to do. Like when in Shadow of the Colossus, when like climbing is such a interesting experience, you don't think of it as quote unquote fun gameplay element, but there's something about it that it communicates to the player. Like you don't have to say it. You're doing the thing and you're kind of in awe of what you're seeing, the spectacle of it all and the consequences of those actions.
Says it with no words, basically, right? No, I assume, again, we've barely seen anything from this game, but from what I can tell, there's going to be no vocal communication. There's not going to use a human language per se. But I see Fumito Ueda's name and I'm instantly excited, and I've seen nothing to take that excitement away yet.
Yeah, same. And you asked him about Last Guardian and the difference between Last Guardian and Gen Atlas. And he straight up, the only thing he said was like, whatever happened with Last Guardian, I'll never want to go through that again. And that's an interesting answer. And it kind of changes the way you approach games and probably like the rate at which he's able to work on games. Because speaking about the communication thing, like one of the things he said is that there's always a sense of isolation in his games. And like, I think those games wield it in a very powerful way. He mentioned that, the character you're controlling and the robot you're kind of working with, there's a little bit more communication there. So I think that something as small, they might not think that that's a big deal, but something as small as that can open up new storytelling opportunities. And it's interesting that he's shared that specifically. So
yeah,
there is surprisingly a lot of action. I think the extended trailer that we were shown showed like, I don't know, if you play Gears, there's like a Hammer of Dawn type thing where you're like summoning like a solar beam from the sky or something. And like, it's just like, there's a lot more going on with this, I think, while still hitting the touchstones that people recognize from this game. If you put this side by side with his other games, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is probably from the same creators. We get these kinds of games so infrequently. So when there's a lot of similarity between the different games that he's worked on, I think that's a really interesting thing. Like someone's got to do it, right? And others have tried, to do like games that don't say as much but try to hit you with revelations and the actions that you take. But the scale at which Ueda usually works on it just hit different. So those are the touchstones that we care about. And that's the reason why, when we saw the trailer at the showcase and when we saw the extended one here at Summer Game Fest, I think it's hitting those notes, but it's going to be a little while till we see it.
I can't wait another 10 years though. I can't do that. I know The Last Guardian took a while. I can't wait. That's been 10 years. I can't wait. Like, hopefully in the next few years, we get to play this. Epic are publishing this one. It's going to be on all platforms, whereas, all his games have been Sony exclusives in the past. So that's kind of a big deal. And yeah, I just, like you said, 10 years. I did ask him, like, I was more intrigued than anything, like what games in the last 10 years have you been enjoying? Not necessarily what inspired Gen Atlas, but gave two answers, one surprising, one not surprising. The first one, he said humanity enhanced his game, which you can kind of see why he'd be into that. And he said he's also been really enjoying Power Wash Simulator. So there you go. Fumito Ueda is a big Power Wash Simulator fan. There we go.
So y'all heard it here first. Fumito Ueda is a big fan of Power Wash Simulator, and we got a lot more stories coming out of Summer Game Fest. So for all that, what's happening in games, stick with IGN.